It's-a me, Dire Gentleman, aka Big Dipper, aka Guso Milkarella, aka Not the Stupendium, aka... Super Transformation Go! Yeah. Oh, Venom! You never know what hit him, unless I hit you with the venom! Oh. Hi everybody, I'm here to talk to you about Amazon Prime's Invincible. It's a really good show. As someone who grew up in the 90s and early 2000s era of cartoons, I saw my share of superhero shows. For example, Justice League. But more, for example, Teen Titans, because I was weeaboo trash, so the one that looked more like anime was the one that I watched. And I still remember a lot of iconic episodes of the original Teen Titans. Who can forget that time that Robin got stuff in his eye and thought that Slade was still around? Who could forget that time that Terra was terrible and she killed everybody, but they didn't really die, but she did. And then there was the Ding Dong Daddy episode. How could you forget the great Ding Dong Daddy? He's the dingest dongest daddy of them all. And so am I. And that's why I'm still here, still watching those good old-fashioned cartoons. Except they're not good and old, they're brand new, and they're awesome. They're better than I thought they could possibly be, and I'm so hard to talk through this mask! Ugh. All right, I'm gonna take that from the top. Jesus Christ. Hey everybody, I'm here to talk about... Hey everybody, I'm here to talk about Amazon Prime's Invincible, which just wrapped up its first season, and I have a lot of thoughts on it. If you followed my channel in the past, you know that I've dabbled in talking about cartoons. I also do a series of videos with my friend and co-writer Henry Galley about Hell of a Boss and about, various Spindle Horse productions. I am a big fan of animation. People who do it for a living deserve more credit and respect, and when it comes to adult animation, I think we're starting to see an uptick in the kinds of shows that can be aimed at people like me. Now, not to knock children's cartoons, but they are for babies, and any adult who watches them is, by definition, a baby. Oh my god, this suit, it's making me evil. It's making me a bully. I'm alienating, everybody with the premise of this video. But, you know what? Sometimes you gotta overcome the monster inside and be a better human being. I've reclaimed my humanity. I am no longer Venom. I am now Eddie Brock, and I'm here to give you the Boulder badge for being a 90s kid like me, because you know what I mean. You know what I'm saying. Becoming an adult can be difficult. In fact, I've been trying for decades, but Invincible has its heart in the right place with making that sort of a central thematic point. You've got your main character, Mark Grayson, who is played by Steven Yeun, and he manages to feel both a kid who could be a tough go-getter kid, but also he's vulnerable, he's got a heart, he's a bit of a romantic. I guess you could say Mark is not fully formed. It's unclear who he could really become. He hasn't quite found himself yet, and at 17, that's pretty understandable. However, he does have an ideal to strive for, and that is his father, Omni-Man, who happens to be the most powerful superhero on Earth, and basically, everything that Mark wants to be. He even says that word for word, early on. He wants to be exactly like his dad. He wants to do what he does. He wants to be a superhero. And fortunately, episode 1 kicks off with him gaining his powers by hurling a trash bag into space. And let me tell you, my summer job in high school was working at a beach and being a maintenance worker and carrying those bags around and putting them in the dumpster. And so the weight that they gave to the bags, as he's moving them around, it's such a great contrast to when he just whips one out, It really it not only passes the animation SAC test, which I guess is a rudimentary thing of showing objects with weight, but it also shows just how how different the complete lack of regard for the laws of physics that he is able to exert when he's like super powered is just like boom. It's a cool contrast, and you feel the weight of the bags and then you don't feel it. It's fantastic. It's really interesting too because Mark right out the gate, and like as he starts like crime fighting and starts doing the superhero thing, because he is descended from like the strongest superhero, he basically has like all the powers of like a Superman or like a Thor. Like he's really, really strong, and it's all the other stuff that he needs to worry about. We've like dodged the whole like he needs to learn how to like control his powers. He needs to like get stronger. He needs to like train up and get swole. It's just kind of shown that what's more important than accumulating the raw power to use like violence and to like manipulate the environment around him to his benefit. What's more important than that is him attaining the maturity, the candor, the heroic mindset, how to put his skills to best use for the sake of others. It's rather selfless and rather interesting, and it's also runs completely counter to who Omni-Man actually is as a character. And everybody who's watched the show knows what I'm talking about in regards to that. And so there's this immediate interesting conflict because of the disconnect between what Mark thinks he's like going to become, who he thinks he wants to be, compared to the reality of who his idol, his father, the man he respects more than anyone else in the world, actually is. And that is the glue that holds this whole thing together, and really, it ties just about every single character thread together. And I'll tell you more about that after I answer that fucking text message, because I can't be left alone for even a second, even though I'm a busy man with a busy job. God! Alright, so let me just address something like right out the gate, because it's like really important to like what I'm going to talk about next. And it's this weird vocal minority of people on the internet who are like, I wanted to like Invincible, but it was woke, so I can't in good conscience expose myself to this propaganda. And you know what kind of people these are. Whenever they like see a hint of melanin in a show, or they like see a single letter of the LGBTQ spectrum, they're like, ugh, and they like vaporize themselves, and no longer do they want to give their money to Orlando because, they're surrounded by a world that no longer values the same thing they value. And, more power to them. I wish them a happy death and, maybe a good life in between if they can stomach the thought of having other people around who might think differently than them. But what I am saying is that, yeah, of course a show like Invincible, where it takes superheroes seriously and realistically, is gonna get a little political. That's just like a day-to-day thing that we all experience, and those who are powerful, those who wield the greatest amount of power within themselves and have an effect on society, those are the avenues through which they can use that power. So, if there were a group of people who were super powerful, super heroic, and they were there to save the world over and over again, of course politics would get tied up in it. Of course any meaningful way that human beings interact with our own society would get involved. And I think it's really important to note that Mark learns that through experience. He learns that the raw power he has because of his inherent Viltrumite blood is not necessarily sufficient to just save the world. People get hurt. Other people are not as physically strong as him. They aren't born with the same ability, the same power. So he has to do his best. There's a very interesting in kind of sad and tragic moment in one of the early episodes where Mark tries to save his first life, and it's this old woman, and she's just not built like he is, and her entire life she wouldn't have been able to do the things that he is just starting to do in his young life. And it's this moment of Mark realizing that the value of human life, that he still has to do something about it. It's fantastic, it's beautiful, and it's tragic, and just don't don't forget. More so than that, more so than like the, like, you know, minor, like, you know, micro, like, examples of this, there's a bigger example with Adam Eve's entire character arc. She starts out as someone who thinks, oh, I know, I'll just bzz, 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 zappy, zappy, zap, and that'll take care of crime. Like, she has this ability, and she thinks, like, putting on a costume, like, doing, like, you know, traditional superhero stuff, fighting aliens, fighting monsters, being on a team, that is like exactly what the world needs. But what she comes to realize, and like what she really wants out of life, is to like help people. She was just kind of misled about how to do it. So towards the end of the season, she starts doing good in an entirely different way. And it's amazing because her power, like, she's Adam Eve. She can restructure atomic material. Not living creatures, I don't think, or at least not, like, human beings or animals. She can do whatever with plants. She's real good at that. Adam Eve, like, learns how to, like, you know, solve hunger, solve, like, you know, real problems that people are facing. Like, and by real problems, I literally mean real world problems. Not like aliens have come through a portal, help us, or like an ancient evil has been resurrected, or a kaiju has come up from the foaming depths. Like, no, real, actual, real world problems. And that's what makes it relatable, and that's what, unfortunately for some people who don't like to interface with the real world, that's what also makes it political. Because the personal is the political. Alright, so now that I've gotten that stupid bullshit out of the way that's gonna get me canceled by a bunch of stupid 16-year-olds, let's talk about, like, the characters. Because this show, as a, like, superhero franchise show, and as one that's going to go on, it sets up so many interesting superheroes, so many interesting, like, people with power. And because they have power, they also have narrative power, and they're able to affect the storyline in multiple different ways. For example, the Mahler twins, who are both physically, like, brutally powerful and, like, a matched set of monsters that are, like, on missions to, like, you know, kill the president, to do, like, whatever, you know? They are out there just causing havoc, but they also got thinking minds. They got brains. They are, like, masters of cloning technology. They are excellent recurring supervillains in that, like, they are brains and brawn, and they have the amazing running gag of not knowing which is the original and which is the clone. And the reason why they do that is revealed later, and it's fantastic, and you get it, and it's like, it's not like a weird gimmick. It means something to the characters, and it means something to, like, why they're there. Even though it, like, causes them to conflict and get on each other's nerves, when the chips are down, half of the time, one of them will team up with the other one to, like, you know, preserve both of them. But the thing, too, is that, like, that's why there's Thing 1 and Thing 2. There's two of them, so one of them can always be expendable. But if both of them are at risk, they'll obviously work together. It's fascinating. And then, beyond them, there's also Alan the Alien, who kind of, like, he like, affects a change in Mark. He, like, you know, shows Mark that, like, you know, sometimes you can just talk it out, or sometimes there's more to it than just the fighting, and if you understand the wider context, you know what the actual solution is. Sometimes the solution is still knocking the crap out of someone, but sometimes it's actually just addressing, you know, a small clerical error and what happened, and that's the case with Alan the Alien. He's a great guy. He's got a great design. To be frank, though, he does look like a nightmare monster that I saw when I was a kid. I tell you, when I was a young little boy, before I even knew about superheroes, I was like, oh no, who's gonna protect me from this orange cyclops that lurches out of the darkness at me and stares at me with its one eye? And so the next day, you know, I went down to the local comic book store, I bought a Spider-Man comic, and I never looked back because I knew that somehow, some way, this tangent would mean something to the context of this video. And on that note, Damien Darkblood, oh! I mean, Clancy Brown's voice acting is great, of course, but just this detective, this like, demon detective. He's a demon detective, and he's, like, you know, going around, he's solving problems, he's solving crimes, and from what I've heard, they gave him a much more, like, expanded role. They, like, gave him a lot more agency than compared to, like, in the original comics. He's just cool and anything that Clancy Brown voices that's like a +1 for me. And like beyond that, you know, there's them and there's Doc Seismic. How can I forget Doc Seismic, the center of the controversy that I was just talking about, where people are thought. Look, okay, if people are mad that Doc Seismic was saying like woke things, like he was being a total swidge, like, would you want to be like Terra mixed with like Ivo Robotnik? Is that who you would want to be? Like, he is clearly not a role model. He's destroying like precious like monuments of the United States. He's like wrecking havoc and needs to be stopped and put in his place by two teenagers who aren't having any of the inane nonsense that he's saying. So like, if people think that Doc Seismic is meant to be the moral center of the show, no, he might be the center of the earth in terms of like, you know, manipulating the mantle and the core of the earth and the lava and the lava golems to do his bidding, but he certainly isn't any kind of center of like, you know, anything thematically important or any like heart. He's just he's like the Lizard League. He just happens to, you know, be a guy who you hate. I could go on all day about the characters of Invincible, but at the end of the day, all of them are like built along a fantastic thematic axis that begins at Omni-Man and maybe ends at Mark's mother, Debbie, who I haven't mentioned before because, you know, she's not a superhero, she's just a mundane human, but like, her writing is fantastic. Not only does she start to piece together the real truth of like what's going on in the plot, she also is just so strong in her convictions and the way that she is able to talk to the most powerful beings on the entire planet Earth. She really is able to like converse with them, and while she's speaking, while she's saying lines to them, you feel this sense of like there is equality there. There is equal humanity. The only thing that differentiates her and them is their capacity for violence. It's something that Debbie is aware of, and something that maybe she could even fear. And she's right to fear it, because Debbie is humanity, and Mark is torn between humanity and being a Viltrumite. And in the context of, you know, outside of the lore of the show, being a Viltrumite just seems to be being a really powerful thing that can do whatever it wants. Being this amorphous blob of violence and conquest that just goes wherever it wants and does whatever it wants. That's why Omni-Man did the thing, that's why he did the other thing, that's why he continues to do things. Because he just feels this innate sense of it's all beneath him. He points this out to like Mark a few times throughout the series in like subtle ways that don't give away his game, but in the season finale he really hammers it in that Mark is supposed to be different from everyone else, and in a way, he's supposed to have no tethers to humanity, to his mother, to his friends, to anyone. And he lays out this scenario to Mark where it's like, what will you do? Who will you be when you have none of these people? You have no family, you have no friends, you don't even have a civilization or a society or anything to relate to anymore. What will you do when everything you know and you love is gone? And Mark's response is that he'd have his father, is that he'd have Omni-Man. And that's beautiful. It is this completion of his character arc in a way that, like, yeah, he always wanted to be like his dad, but now he knows that his father is not like the person that he thought he was. But still, even if there were some hypothetical scenario where all the things he cares about, everything he knows and loves was gone, he'd know that he'd still have one other person like him, one other person that can relate to him. And the fact that he was able to show any level of love and compassion and empathy for the man who has taken everything from everyone to the worst enemy of the entire earth, that is fascinating. That is powerful. And it's true, too. as much as Omni-Man, in his biggest moments of evil and of conquest and of whatever the fuck he wants to do, in his biggest moments of that, Omni-Man has emphasized that human life doesn't matter, that everything is beneath you, that only conquest and war and violence matter. But that's just not true. And it's emphasized through other characters that Mark has encountered throughout his journey. Think of Titan, who was sick of just being a raw muscle for like a bigger faction, and instead he took the seat at the top of that company for himself. Sure, you could say that his actions were pretty selfish, but in a way, he was also becoming something that was more than just a blunt instrument, more than just a blunt tool. He wanted to rule, he wanted to control the city, and time will tell whether he's more like a benevolent ruler, something like what Mark could be, or more like Omni-Man. But beyond him, we've got Robot, who did everything he could just to live an ordinary human existence. He just wanted to be alive. And think, that is something that Omni-Man does not put any value in, any stake in at all. He does not value the human life that Robot fought so hard to just even slightly manage to gain. Robot sacrificed. He sacrificed so much just to become alive. And again, his reasoning is also selfish, but not entirely selfish. And that leads us to a third character who is very much embodying this theme of slightly selfish actions, but within limitations, because they value life. For example, Battle Beast. Now, I know Battle Beast has an extended history in the comics, and I'm really excited to see him in later seasons, but in his appearance, what we know about him in this show is that he is searching for strong opponents, he is searching to fight people, and boy is he good at fighting. He is super strong, he's a conqueror, and you might compare him to someone like Omni-Man, except there's a key difference. Battle Beast doesn't slay the weak. He doesn't prey on people who he knows their lives would not be taken from them in like a glorious equal combat with him. He wants an even chance of being killed in the fights he goes in. That's essentially why he like pieces out of the action into season 2 or 3 if like they just, I hope he's in season 2. Because Battle Beast, he is like what he himself is in contrast to Omni-Man. And in a way, Mark can look up to the strength of someone who knows when they are just stepping on people who don't deserve to be stepped on. Now, I don't mean to paint Battle Beast as like, you know, anyone who's merciful or like, you know, even benevolent or good, but like, you know, he's got standards. He's got standards, and at the end of the day, that's a reflection of the potential humanity too. So, taking all of this into account, Invincible was a really, really thematically dense, interesting show with strong characters, and they were all there for a reason. And the plot ultimately was there to bring out the characters. I haven't even mentioned Cecil, who might be like my favorite character in the entire show. And like, you know, the way he thinks and like his role in everything, it really just like, I just love good characters with strong convictions, and this show has that in spades. And it's a far cry from like some of the other stuff I watched when I was still watching like children's cartoons of the modern era. Now those are great for kids of this modern era, but I shouldn't be watching them. Look at me, I look more like Omni-Man than I do Mark. That's so embarrassing, I had the can backwards. Oh my god. Alright, it might be time to wrap this up. But first, I just gotta say, Invincible, very much worth your time, and I think that more cartoons like this that are hard-hitting, that are dark, that have real-world themes in them, that's exactly what we need. Because I'm not one for escapism. I prefer to just improve my own life and to make my own circumstances better and to try to make the world a better place. That's my escapism. I want the world to be a good place, you know? Because fiction can be as dark and as bloody and as edgy and as cool and as filled with deep, teeming conflicts of interest as it could possibly be. I want art to be dynamic and fantastic and chaotic and a wild experiment. I want all sorts of things to exist. I want to see shit I ain't never seen before. I want my expectations not only subverted, I want to be stabbed in the skull and in the stomach and in the head by the amount of shock and fury that comes at me out of a good story that takes me by the horns. And I don't have horns, but if I did, it would take me by them. It'd grab me by my big bull balls. In order to escape from that nightmare, in order to escape from the clearly violent, horrifying hellscape of art that I've constructed, I want to then escape into a real world that is, nicer, where I have, get to spend time with my friends and my family and just enjoy things. And, ultimately, that's great. Suffering is for art. Suffering is there to, give us insights into the anxieties and the issues and the problems that we have in the real world, and provide us hypothetical solutions and create a petri dish of ideas that maybe, something somewhere there will be a solution. Art is speculative. It's speculation. It's a rumination on the human condition, and it's a reflection of who we are. And that's why it's always going to be political, Sonny. And you can't escape from that. Oh, I'm so excited for season 2 of motherfucking Invincible. Oh, God. That's where I want to go. Pigland. That's where I want to go. Oh, shit. Oh, fuck!